is absolutely on fire right now, and a move that is absolutely shocking to at least me. We got some breaking news coming to us in regards to Julio Jones. That means another very well-known wide receiver is officially available on the free agency market. Now, before we get to the content, make sure you join my Discord community in the description down below so you can get all the notifications in the event that YouTube stops giving you notifications, and make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay up to date with all the latest NFL news. If you could leave a like and subscribe to support the grind, that'd be appreciated as well. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? 1 year ago, no, I think it was even less than a year ago, the Tennessee Titans sent shockwaves throughout the entire NFL by trading for Julio Jones. It was at the time a trade that was kind of disappointing to Atlanta Falcons fans, and the Titans shipped a 2022 second round pick and a 2023 fourth round pick to get Julio Jones. Now, Julio Jones had a tremendous cap hit of $23 million. The Tennessee Titans needed to rework a decent amount of their contracts in order to fit him in. And ultimately, it was seen as a really cute story because apparently AJ Brown also kind of idolized Julio Jones.
I haven't even been released yet. Okay, I'm gonna sell you on some things right here. Listen to me closely. You have Tannehill, Mr. Finger Roll himself. Every time, Aaron Hill. Listen, he does what he needs to be done. Like, he's a leader. He's a great passer. He's it. Anyway, next. Him, behind me, superhuman. We don't even have to discuss him. He speaks for himself. Look how mean he look in the picture. Like, okay. Then me, I'm up and coming. Pro Bowl year 2. Not a big deal. Kind of a big deal, but not really. Okay, scratch that. Anyway, whatever. You, the GOAT of our era, of our receivers. Help me, help you. Come home, Julio. Come home.
But after one season with the Tennessee Titans, Julio Jones didn't really look like Julio Jones of old. And this is to be expected after playing in the NFL for a decade, man. Obviously, injuries will catch up to you. Julio had trouble staying healthy this past year. The Tennessee Titans were supposed to be an absolute contender in the AFC. They had a first round bye, and in their very first game in the playoffs, they weren't able to do much. As a matter of fact, they got defeated by the eventual AFC champion, Cincinnati Bengals. Now, ultimately, I felt like, okay, maybe give it another year to try to work things out. Maybe if you get everyone back and they're healthy, then things could potentially work out. But no, that doesn't seem to be the case, because according to Adam Schefter and Diana Rossini, the Tennessee Titans are planning on releasing wide receiver Julio Jones. Now, my initial thought was, somebody please check on AJ Brown. It must be very difficult to have the man that you were looking up to as a wide receiver growing up be in your locker room, possibly at your lockers next to one another, really have an opportunity to learn as much as you can from him, and then your team outright cuts them. So why would the Tennessee Titans do this to AJ Brown, and why would they release Julio Jones? Well, today is officially the start of the new league year. The Julio Jones experiment provided some very mixed results. He still continued to have problems trying to stay healthy, and when Julio Jones was on the field, he really wasn't the best version of himself. He still was a decent wide receiver, but he definitely wasn't worth his contract this past year. Just looking at his basic statistics, man, 1 receiving touchdown, 434 receiving yards, 31 receptions on 46 targets, had a 74.9 grade for receiving from Pro Football Focus, and a 74.2 overall. This is his second year in a row where he's kind of declined. In his final year with the Atlanta Falcons, there were some signs that he might be declining, and he was dealing with injuries for quite some time, but this year kind of reinforced that possibility. The thing is, Julio Jones looked very effective in his final game with the Tennessee Titans. He had 6 receptions for 62 yards, but by doing this, the Tennessee Titans saved $9.5 million in cash and salary cap space in 2022, and this leaves $8.4 million in dead money in 2023 because they're spreading the cap hit over 2 years. Now, I would say that This was necessary considering that the Tennessee Titans had to re-sign Harold Landry, and in my opinion, I think retaining their best edge rusher was significantly more important than trying to hope that Julio Jones works out with A.J. Brown. They currently have the 26th pick in the NFL draft. This is why I waited until after free agency to start doing mock drafts, because it is so difficult to do a mock draft pre-free agency. It's much easier to see what teams do in free agency and create your draft picks based off of that. Now with A.J. Brown and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine on the roster, which nothing against Westbrook-Ikhine, he had similar production to Julio Jones this past year, but played in way more games than Julio Jones did. The depth chart in Tennessee isn't necessarily looking so hot, but with the 26th pick in the NFL draft, maybe some of the wide receivers fall to you. I feel like it's a good year for wide receivers. You have players like Chris Olave coming out for the NFL draft. Drake London's draft stock has been a little bit rocky, so you don't know where he's going to go. There's an opportunity to fix your wide receiver depth without having to invest as much capital by making this move. It's a very difficult move at that, but I still think teams are going to give Julio Jones one more chance. I don't think this is a scenario where people are looking at Julio Jones and saying, this dude is washed and he can't play in the NFL. That couldn't be the furthest from the truth. The man is having some issues with durability, but it's not as bad as most people are saying. Again, he was still very effective in his final game with the Tennessee Titans, and this past year he did play 10 out of his 17 games, and the year before he played 9 out of his 16 games. So again, durability is a question. I don't really think he's a true number one wide receiver anymore, but at the very minimum, a great guy to have in your wide receiver room, and still a physical matchup nightmare, even if he could be 70% of what he once was, which it appears to me at the bare minimum he is. I feel like this next year he's probably going to get like a AJ Green type of contract. I'm hoping that my Dallas Cowboys might make a move for him, but that's just me just throwing stuff on the wall and hoping it sticks. It really depends on what Julio Jones wants at this point of his career. I could see him being at a position where he wants to start ring chasing, and if that's the case, oh my god, can we just imagine Julio Jones in a Kansas City Chiefs jersey? I'm not sure if that'll happen because the Chiefs have so much depth at the wide receiver position, but I could see him potentially signing with a contender that is in a huge need for a wide receiver. Maybe he joins the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and fills in the role that Antonio Brown left wide open. Anything's a possibility at this point. Let me know what you guys think could happen with Julio Jones in the comment section down below, and make sure you're following me on Twitter, Instagram, and joining my Discord community, because I don't think you guys are getting notifications currently because we're uploading too much. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.